Hey everyone, this episode contains discussion that some viewers may find disturbing. If you are affected by anything that we talk about on today's show, you can find links for support in the description.
As long as you find someone who shares the values that you do, and you're on the same page about how you want to raise the child, then I'm kind of cool with it. The thing that really threw me was people who want to co-parent. It's not romantic, but they still try to conceive naturally.
Oh, what, have the sex?
Yeah.
Have the sex.
Hi, I'm Anissa.
I'm Sophie Hannah.
And I'm Luanda Yasmin. Welcome to the 22nd episode of Ethnically Speaking. We are three intelligent, curious, opinionated, and highly melanated women here representing the UK. We will be talking about everything and anything affecting our communities, from pop culture to politics and everything in between. Absolutely nothing is off limits, and we always promise to keep it 100% real. So forget tiptoeing around topics and technically speaking, because today we are ethnically speaking. Start us off, Sophie.
Okay, so I don't know if you ladies know, but in 2001, Portugal decriminalised the use or the personal use of drugs. And as a result, the rates of overdose, HIV infections, and associated crimes all went down. Now, recently, several US states have also voted to legalize the use of drugs, specifically marijuana, but the state of Oregon has gone one step further and decriminalized the personal possession and use of drugs such as cocaine, methamphetamines, and opioids. I wanted to ask you ladies, do you think that the personal possession and the decriminalization of drugs should also be happening in the United Kingdom? And what do we think the knock-on results are going to be? Do we think that prisons are going to see a reduction in addicts, or are we going to see an increase of addicts in society?
Yeah, I think this should pretty much be happening worldwide, to be honest. I think that, whenever we talk about drugs, we talk about drug overdosing and drug addiction. And on the topic of drug overdosing, there was an article that I read that stated that the criminalization of drug possession does not reduce the amount of deaths that happen from drug-related incidences. And as a testament to that as well, there's a festival in the UK, there's a rave called Secret Garden Party. And more than one rave does this, more than one festival does this. But just as an example, Secret Garden Party in 2016 said that they were going to have a drug testing tent. And so you can go there and, make sure the drugs that you're going to take are legit and they're not faulty and they're not going to cause something bad to happen to you. And the year that they did that, they reduced their drug-related incidences by 95% compared to the year before.
Wow.
Literally. So I just think that when there is the threat of imprisonment for recreational use, there is no safety net for people who want to use drugs but don't want to abuse drugs. And then on the topic of addiction as well, I think not all drug use leads to addiction, and England is so obsessed with alcohol. Alcohol is so much in our culture. We drink all the time, when we're happy, when we're sad, at Christmas, at birthdays. But the topic of alcoholism is not as attached to the topic of drinking as the topic of addiction is attached to drugs. And it's not to say that drug abuse doesn't happen, because obviously it does. But I think if we actually want to reduce the problems, then throwing people in jail for having a baggie doesn't actually do that. And so with Oregon, because I think they got it right and we should all follow suit, Oregon, like you said, Sophie, they decriminalized the personal possession of a lot of drugs. And if you're found with the possession of some of the illegal drugs, then you might get a fine and you might have to have a health assessment by a certified drug and alcohol counselor, but you don't go to jail. How does sending these people to jail help people make smarter decisions? How, you know what I mean? So I think Oregon did it right. And I think everyone else should follow suit, because drug abuse is like a health issue and not a criminal issue.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that, and that I think that drug abuse is not a criminal issue. And I think it just speaks to a few episodes ago when we were talking about prison and how we don't think it is a place of reform or correction. So I never think it's the right place for anybody who has an addiction to go. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, for me, it's, as you said, it's more of a health problem versus it's being actual criminal activity. Now, do I think the UK should decriminalise it? Listen, I may be on the bias end of this. My opinion's biased, so I just have to say it there. I'm going to say no. And the reason why I'd say no is because I'm not a partaker in the Los Drogas. It's just not me. And so it does not affect. So for me, the reality of it being criminalised or decriminalised for me makes no difference to my life. So I can almost be ignorant in the fact and say, well, it makes no difference to me, so I'm just going to say no. But I also want to take this opportunity to obviously learn and hear other perspectives and see what are the benefits of, the cocaina for being legal or being decriminalised, so that I can understand why it's a good move. Because when I was reading about Portugal, I understood that it lowered some like overdose rates in regards to death, and also with HIV rates and things like that. But it still had like an adverse effect on their people, and they're still dealing with the long-term effects from that. So I don't see the win here. If that's I don't see the win.
I think that's a really good point that you're making, Anissa. And I think this law that was brought into Portugal, I think we have to be aware that it was brought in because there was such a high rate of addiction. It wasn't brought in for the use of recreational use of drugs. It was brought in because people were overdosing. And then I watched this video on BBC News, and it was talking about the history of drugs in Portugal. And basically because they were under a dictatorship, and when they came out from under the dictatorship, people were looking into different types of freedom, and they were free to try drugs. And because what was brought into the country in terms of the media, news, health news, whatever, was very restricted, when drugs came in, there was no buffer for people to understand how dangerous they could be. So people were experimenting left, right and centre, and it led to a very, very high rate of addiction, overdose, HIV infection via spreading of needles or reusing of needles, or people sharing needles. So they brought it in because people saying it doesn't actually help addicts to put them in prison. There's actually a higher rate of overdose for people that come out of prison who were addicts than for people who, go through some sort of treatment in order to get better from having an addiction. And I think that when I talk about this, I'm not really here for even recreational drugs, to be honest, because I don't think they do anything to help people in terms of health-wise. Like, I'm talking specifically for health. I think that I don't know if they do anything for health. I think they're probably to relax people or to have a good time, which I'm not opposed to either of those. But using drugs, I don't know about that. That's what I'd say. But I definitely see the purpose, and I definitely agree that they should be decriminalised, because people aren't going to come forward if they have an issue with drugs, if they know they're going to face court time. Families aren't going to recommend their family members to come forward or to go get help if they can get arrested at a police station or arrested at a hospital just for having possession of drugs. So I look at it from a health perspective, and I think definitely it's going to help a lot of people by not putting the blame on them for, as Luanda said, something that isn't a criminal issue, it's a social issue.
Here's the thing, guys.
No, I'm not going to say a point. Like, I heard her and I understood that, and now that kind of sways my thoughts. But go ahead, Luanda, sorry.
Okay, so as you said, Anissa, if you don't partake in Los Drogas, that is absolutely fine. Like, if it's not for you, Sophie and Anissa, that's absolutely fine. But the reality is, people are going to use drugs for recreational purposes, whether you particular people, you two, partake or not. Whether you guys, whether Sophie or Anissa approves or disapproves, or thinks it's good or thinks it's bad, people will experiment. People will take drugs. That is just the reality of the situation. So when you're at that age, when you're like a teenager and you're going to festivals and you're out with your friends and you're going to your first raves and all of those things, you are gambling. You are literally gambling every single time because you don't actually know what you're taking. And so most of these overdoses that are happening, the ones that I'm thinking of, is not people. They're not people trying to commit suicide. They're not people trying to do damage to their bodies. Like I said, not everyone that wants to use drugs wants to abuse them. So the way that we can, encourage people left, right, and center to, stay for one more, have another drink, I'll buy the next round. We're so accepting of alcohol within our society, which is a type of drug, but we've been socially conditioned to turn our nose up at these different types of, weed or mandy or cocaine or all of those things. You would never go to a Christmas dinner and have like a line of Coke with your turkey. People would think you're insane. But the reality is that people are going to use these drugs, whether we partake or whether we, agree or disagree. And so now the question becomes like, how are we going to keep people safe? And criminalizing them does not keep them safe. Like I said, the article that I read says the criminalization of drugs does not reduce the amount of drug-related deaths. So if that's what we're worried about, actually the criminalization isn't helping to solve that problem. So how are we actually going to help people either trying to overcome an addiction? And like I said, I get a little bit irritated that, we always associate drugs with addiction, but we don't always associate drinking with alcoholism. But even if someone does have an issue, like you said, Sophie, you're not really going to go for help because you're scared of what can I or can't I say if I'm going to get myself in trouble. And then it becomes like, how are you keeping the kids safe? Because every year at Freshers, all of these babies are trying their first pills, are trying their first lines, and they don't know what they have in their hands, and they don't know where it's coming from.
Not the babies.
Can I come in on that one? Can I come in on that one? Because I feel like it's a little unfair when you're saying, people are going to take that whether you agree or not with it, Sophie and Anissa. Because for me, I'm just like, that's just my opinion. Like, I'm not judging people for taking it. If you want to take drugs, like, for me, if my friend was taking it, I want to make sure that they're staying safe. And I'm like, cool, no problem. I probably need to be a bit more aware because at the end of the day, it's not just people who are, like you say, overdosing, but sometimes they can end up in an unsafe position because they're on drugs. And I think that when we're talking, I just feel like I don't even drink alcohol. So even that talk about, but with I don't drink alcohol because I agree. Alcohol is just as much a drug. Every glass of alcohol that people drink is going to affect them. It kills brain cells. Like, no matter how much you drink, whenever you drink, whatever. That's why I'm saying I'm specific, because unless you're going to tell me that taking drugs helps your health or doesn't affect your body in a negative way. Like, I think me saying that I'm not really here for it is not because I'm trying to stop people's fun, but even saying people are going to take it and they're more at risk because they don't know what they're taking. I guess for me, I'm just like, if you don't know what you're taking, like, wait for like a trusted dealer or someone that has a good source of something.
But the trusted dealer is always, obviously people are going to go for that route. Like, the trusted dealer is always going to be the route that you'll take. But even the most trusted dealer, I'm saying, you still don't know what it is. And that's the difference of
but isn't that more scary? That's the bit that doesn't make sense to me, because I'm saying, like, for me, like, growing up, that's the bit that's the thing, like, they showed those really scary videos in school about that girl that took ecstasy and then her brain swelled and then they said, don't take drugs. Like,
I just say that I love the fact that those videos worked for at least one person.
And the thing is,
do you know, it wasn't, do you know Anissa coming? I can see you coming.
Let me just jump in. I think though, I know we're saying a lot like if we decriminalise it, people may feel more confident going forward saying they have an issue. But I agree and disagree in that regard, because I think a lot of the time the reason why people don't come forward is also because of perception, and I don't know if the law would change that. There is a perception, especially if you're from a certain environment, certain culture, people who have addiction to drugs or partake in drugs, they are viewed a certain way, but the people who sell drugs are revered in a different way. So it's about perception. And I think perception also led me to, like, I've never touched a drug in my life. I've never even smoked a cigarette. It's just not my bag. But it's just never been my style, really. But a lot of that also came from me being younger and my perception. Where I grew up, it was just like, okay, you saw the chavs smoking cigarettes. I was like, oh no. And then, like, anybody who's on drugs or even smoking weed, like, they were just acting like, and I hate to say it, this is how people will say it, and this is where perception comes in. They'll be like, oh, she's a nitty, he's a nitty. It's like this derogatory term, so you're almost programmed to think, oh gosh, like, absolutely not. Like, I do not even want any parts in that. So I think that was where I came from. But I think a lot of people who don't come forward, if they do have a drug abuse problem, it's not as much law. I think it's really about perception, because it's that you could be seen as an idiot, basically.
I agree with that, but I think perception does fall into the law, because that's exactly why I always compare it to alcohol, because that's why I said we don't have these conversations on this level, because you want to talk about someone who's a nitty and someone who's a dealer, but what's the difference between that and someone who's at the bar and someone who's pouring the cocktail? Do you see what I'm saying? But in our current culture, it's so celebrated to be drinking. You go out with your friends and it's like, oh, I could drink you under the table. Oh yeah, well, challenge me then. I'll get 10 shots of tequila. I'll get 15. It's a competition. It's a way to beat your chest. It's like, it's something to be proud of. Like, oh, I had all of this and I didn't even pass out. Or, oh, I had a blackout, a night of blackout. Oh, so funny. And it's like this hilarious, acceptable thing. Whereas if you were to tell all of those stories, but switch wine with weed or switch a beer with a line of Coke, like, people are going to be worried for you. And I'm not saying that they should be more or less worried, but I'm saying that there isn't a kind of freedom within our society to talk about these things where people feel safe to admit, okay, now I'm doing this and I'm doing it too much, or, you know, I had too many drinks or things like that. Like, I remember when I had my first blackout from drinking, I was traumatized. I was horrified. I couldn't fathom the fact that I'd lived a night and I didn't remember it. And I went to work and I told my friends, I was like, guys, what happened? I don't remember anything past 9 p.m. And they laughed. Like, everyone found it hilarious. And I was like, I've never been more disgusted with myself in my life. Like, how is this so normal? Right? It is not, but it was normalized. It was completely normalized. And people look at me like, oh my gosh, you're how old? And you've just now had your first blackout. And I'm like, what?
But that could be a culture thing as well, though, Luanda. Like, British people love to drink.
Exactly.
Like, if I even have a little piece of rum cake, my mum will call me an alcoholic. Like, I think it's a culture thing. Like, British people love to drink. My Caribbean mum will say, hell no.
I think it really depends as well on the circles that you move in, because I don't think, like, a lot of my friends, like, don't drink as well. So I think it really does depend, because if I said that I had a blackout from drinking, like, I think it is a scary thing. But I think one of my friends wouldn't be saying that. So I think it really does depend, like, who you're friends with, who you hang out with. And I just think that the drugs thing has been used so much. So I don't think, no, that's what I wanted to say. In terms of alcohol, I think one of the reasons it doesn't happen in our society is because a lot of people are making money off of alcohol. And that's the reason why they try to make it much more a celebratory thing, because massive companies are backed up with the sale of alcohol and the production of cigarettes and things like that. Because you're right, Luanda, there is no much more of a health risk than from taking those things as to taking drugs that are currently illegal. And I think that this breaking down the stigma, and that's what they said in Portugal, has to go hand in hand. They were saying you can't say there's soft drugs and there's hard drugs, or have this association of the junkie and then the person who only use it recreationally. We need to break down all of it and really allow people to be free and open with these conversations, as you're saying, because we need to be able to differentiate between those people having a good time and those people who need help, and no one should feel bad about being in either camp.
Facts.
Well said.
Oh, nothing else to say, ladies?
No, well, I mean, what I was going to say was really random, but I don't know if anybody has the answer, so I don't really want to. I'll just touch on it very lightly. I was watching this documentary the other day about this North Korean defector, and she was saying that, like, for medicine, a lot of them in North Korea would use, like, crystal meth or something as, like, medication. Whether it actually worked, I don't know, but they were just too poor to pay for any other medication. So that's a thought.
Yeah.
I don't know if some of this drugs is healing.
No, I was going to touch on that, Sophie, because there are actually so many benefits to weed. Like, so many health benefits. And I remember my friend at school, she had a lot of issues with her back, and she kept going back and back to the doctors, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with her, but she was in so much pain. And then he gave her, like, the license to grow and smoke her own weed. And I have another friend as well who smokes every day legally because she has to get rid of her pain. So there are benefits for using everything in moderation. I just forgot to make that point earlier.
Oh,
no,
see,
I think that's a
so.
good point to make. Like,
Thanks,
I would like to
Anissa.
know, and we probably don't have time to talk about it now, but I want to know, because obviously there's people with cancer who will use medical marijuana as well, so that definitely.
Yeah.
I want to know if there's benefits to, like, having cocaine and methamphetamines and opioids and heroin. That's what I want to know. So, but we have to talk about that another time. I wanted to actually talk to you guys about a different type of chemical substance, and I'm talking about the ones in the health and beauty world. So the craze and the trend of health and beauty products is not looking to slow down anytime soon. Recently, personalized health and beauty products you can apply for online, and by answering a few questions, you can get bespoke hair, bespoke skin products, perfectly matched makeup, vitamin supplements, everything to help your individual lifestyle. But with the rise of personal health and beauty products, I want to know, do you think that they're actually unique to our individual needs, or is the beauty industry really just trying to sell us pre-packaged goods?
See, I think it goes a little bit hand in hand, but I'm more on the side of, I think it's just the beauty industry trying to sell us prepackaged goods. But I do think there's a lot of people, like, you know, the small businesses who maybe start with a unique idea that they have good intention, but of course they want to make money. So, but overall, I think it's just to sell us prepackaged products, because I think this whole idea of appealing to the individual and that kind of thing, it's just the new marketing tool. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think years ago, decades ago, it was all about fitting in. So you wanted to do something that the masses were doing, but now it's all about making it individual. So the more individual you can make it, like tailor it to your skin, your hair, your color, like the person you as a consumer think, oh, well, this is for me. I can see myself in it. As soon as you can make a consumer think that they can have real world application to it, they can apply it to their own life, you're more likely to buy it. Now, I had a look at some of the goods that were out there that they were saying was unique, and I think I looked at, there was a skincare company. Anyway, they had a quiz, right? And if you did their quiz, they would give you the perfect skincare products matched perfectly for your skin. Now, I tried it. The quiz looked good. I didn't buy the product, but you know, the quiz, it was. They were asking me questions, and all the right questions that I would ask myself if I was going into the store and buying a skincare product. But with a lot of these personalized products, I found is that they're doing it a lot through questionnaires. And I always find questionnaires so limiting, because I either have to choose the one I most like if one isn't directly like me. And that's exactly what I found with this skincare questionnaire when I was getting the perfect skincare regime, because I was like, well, I don't know if my issue is dry skin, and I'm not sure if it's 100% hyperpigmentation, but you're telling me to choose one, and so I'm just going to choose whatever I feel is right, and it might actually not be the right product for me, but it's just another way to get at people. I'm not here for it personally, but you know, I like a good marketing campaign when I see one, so yeah.
But speaking of marketing, though, I think it's interesting the way that different types of products are marketed to different types of people, because I was reading something that said that beauty products that are marketed towards women are about 13% more expensive than they are for men. And I remember shopping with my friend, and she was getting razors, and she just immediately picked up the men's razors. And then we had a conversation about it, and she said, you know, women's razors are more expensive for it to be what? Pink? And so now I think if you have personalized beauty treatment, because I was looking at the things that they ask you, and they talk about your environment, like what your skin could be going through within your environment, that means you have to put in your postcode. So I'm thinking, are they going to do something cheeky and see people who are buying from more affluent areas and then charge them up a little bit?
Oh,
that's a very interesting
business, baby. Business, baby.
I did not see you going there, Luanda, to be honest.
It was smart. Good idea. That's what
I was going to say something similar, but slightly different, in the sense that I think you're really hitting the nail on the head, Luanda, because they're saying a lot of these companies, after you fill in the questionnaire, do keep the data and do sell the data and do use your data in order to, well, sell it on to people and also to kind of use it to promote other things to you. And I think that's always the danger in the more information that we give to these online systems and personalized beauty. But do you know what? I like to have things personalized as well, but I don't know how personalized it can really be when you're answering me certain questions, because let's be honest, most of these companies are not saying, you know what, Anissa, Luanda, I'm going to find you the best foundation there is out there. What they're saying is, fill in the questionnaire and we're going to give you the best foundation that we have. And use this, whether it's the best one for you or not, like, they come in from a very limited stock. And 100%. You don't know, even the ingredients, they only use specific ingredients. So if some of those ingredients are not the best ones for you, they might still have to put it in because it's like, these are our only range. So I think that for some people, it might be good because, Luanda, you're a vegan. So if you didn't want vegan products, like for them, that might be a good thing. Do you know what I mean? Or if you have an allergy, you can say, leave that out. But I think in general, I think there's more going on behind the scenes.
You think they're shady
business?
A little bit, yeah, I do. I really do. And I hate to say it because I don't want to keep badgering on and be like, everything's a con, but
the thing is,
the one with that energy.
The one that I saw that I thought was particularly strange was like the one where you could like build your own multivitamin that you could take, and it would be all the different nutrients that you need. And like for me, I'm the worst because give me a questionnaire and I'm just going to tick whatever I think is relevant, but I don't know 100% if this is what I need. And sometimes I don't know what I need until I need it. So for me, it's kind of like I'd prefer to maybe go to the doctors and they do some blood work and say, oh girl, you low in iron, maybe try this, like versus me on the computer going, yeah, I think I need better nails. I think I need it. But do you know what I mean? I think with things like that, I think vitamins shouldn't be something that is tailored personally in that specific way. It wasn't for me. When I was reading this stuff and looking at all the different things you could get personalized, I was just like, oh my gosh, I don't know if it's any of it's for me.
So Anissa, you know how most of the time when you answer questions, you're always like, yes, but with an asterisk, and then you expand on that. You know what I mean? Like, multiple choice questionnaires stress me out for that purpose because I need to put an asterisk and expand on that. It's not always yes or no. It might be yes but or no if. You know what I'm saying? So I completely understand. And the multivitamin thing, I must have missed that because I don't know. I don't know about that one. You know,
you can do this questionnaire and they'll build you a vitamin.
Yeah, I think it's always better to talk to a person. I understand the personalization of everything though, because I've worked in cosmetics before, and in terms of people's skincare, like it is important to like see them and talk to them about it and just be face to face and have that interaction. But face to face is not like text to screen. It's a completely different means of communication. And even people are saying, oh, we're sending in pictures, but we all know from Instagram how you can make a picture look.
100%.
So we just don't know what we're receiving. So yeah, I don't know about it. It's not like a bad idea, as well. But I'm done.
I was just going to say, for me as well, I say number one, like, it just feels like another way to tell people, especially women, that we're not good enough the way that we are. Like, basically, all these things that are specific to you that are going to make you a better you and a healthy you and a better skin you and a better hair you. It's just, some of it just feels like consumerism just amped up and pumped up. So, but like I said, I'm happy to have individual products, but I think it's a very muddy water. I don't think they actually want the best for us.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's unique to me, but if it's a good marketing campaign and the product works, then you've got me. Do you know what I mean? But don't tell me it's individual. Just tell me it's a good product and that's it. So if you've liked what you've seen so far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, a like, and subscribe if you are watching on YouTube. So far we have covered whether the possession of drugs should be decriminalised in the UK and whether beauty products being personalised are truly unique to us or if they're all a big marketing ploy. But I want to talk about something that I saw last week. So basically, a disturbing video was circulated on social media in which a woman was alerted by her younger sister intercepted a man in Mitcham, South London, who was attempting to abduct an 11-year-old girl on her way to school. Recording from her phone, the woman basically followed the man and she can be heard questioning him until he eventually walks away, leaving the girl crying and clearly distressed. It is understood that she had already been sexually assaulted, and following the appeal, the police have now arrested the man. The community has taken it upon themselves to begin patrolling the neighbourhood before and after school, but what steps do we need to take and what conversations do we need to have with children to prevent incidents like this from happening?
This is a tough one, because I saw the video kind of, I stumbled across it. Let me say that. I stumbled across the video and I think I watched it and I was actually very, very disturbed by it. I didn't think I would be. But in terms of what we can do to prevent it, I think one of the first things is understanding that we are never going to be able to prevent it completely. There is nothing that we are going to be able to do to eradicate it. And I think that's one of the hardest things. As with any issue or crime that we have in any country, we're never going to be able to eradicate it completely, and then we have to talk then probably more so about prevention rather than eradication. And I think in terms of children, I think a lot of it stems with education. And I would probably just talk about one thing because there's probably a lot that you guys want to say, but one of the things would be boundaries and letting children know that it's okay to say no, that they don't like something, that they don't always have to be polite and kind, because I think we really drill into children. And I think especially, can I say black children, ethnic minority children? I don't know if I can say that. Let me speak for myself then, and people who I know growing up, people that I know, there's a heavy, I wouldn't say pressure, but you have to be polite to your elders. You have to be respectful, get up if they tell you to, do this, do that. And what we're really doing sometimes is eroding children's boundaries. So if they're not happy or comfortable with something, we tell them, if it's an adult telling you, you need to listen to it. But we need to allow children and educate them to, if it doesn't feel okay, if you're not happy, if you don't want to do something, it is okay to say, no, I don't want to. It's not all right. For me, that would be one of the things.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good start. I was completely disturbed by the video, and I knew that I would be, but I said to myself I wasn't going to watch it because even reading the words was enough. So I just clicked on the article to read about it. But then, when the videos load quite quickly, and it just loaded, it was on my screen, and then I watched it. And then, I'm not going to lie, guys, I cried for the rest of the day. Like, I cried for the whole night, and I was just like, so distraught from it, which is why whenever we talk about things, we talked a couple of episodes ago about SARS, and I was like, yeah, I've been avoiding the videos because this is what happens to me. But the way that I see problems is like an iceberg, and I think the tip of the iceberg is what we saw in the video, or worse. But obviously problems aren't birthed from the top, they're birthed from the base. So then when we talk about prevention, I'm thinking, okay, we prevent something by figuring out what created it to begin with. And I think with scenarios like this, I think it's very easy to get outraged at what this man did to this child. But how outraged are you when you see everyday rape culture, everyday casual rape culture in your friendship groups at work, and you say nothing? All of these things lead to something as outrageous as what that man did, but it starts all the way over here, and that's what I think we don't always pay attention to. And so I'd like to say, obviously no one is safe from assault, like whether you're like an adult or a child, a senior, or a boy or a girl or whatever. Like, no one is safe from assault, but I'm just going to speak in terms of men and women because it's easier to form the sentences that way for now. But us, like women, we can sit here and we can talk about this until we're blue in the face, and we can talk about it articulately, and we can talk about it passionately. But the kind of man who disregards a woman to the point where he's going to harm her is not going to hear a word that's coming out of my mouth. So just like I expect, I'm always talking about white allies, just like how I expect white allies to hold their racist white friends or racist white acquaintances and racist white family members accountable, and just like how I expect us cisgendered people to hold transphobic people accountable, I'm expecting men to call out rape culture when they see it happen with other men that they respect, with other men that they don't like, other men that are their bosses, other men that are their brothers, their dads. Like, you need to be open enough to have this conversation about how dominance is a applauded trait to have as a male. It's almost an expected part of your masculinity. And we need to talk about how we teach men that sex is something that they're entitled to, and what happens when you are denied something that you're entitled to. You just take the thing. So we need to talk about this from the beginning, because yes, it's brilliant to be, patrolling your neighborhoods to try and prevent children interacting with pedophiles, but how are we eradicating pedophiles to begin with?
I think you've brought up some really good points, and you articulated it very well. And I think I couldn't have said it any better, because although I posed the question to you lovely ladies, I don't know if talking to the children is the prevention. Do you know what I mean? Because they're the victim. Like, they're the victim. I mean, you can always tell children to be vigilant and do as much as they can. But if somebody wants to pose a threat to someone, that's exactly what they're going to do. And so there needs to be a conversation. I mean, and when I was thinking about, okay, you're going to have the conversation with people who are the hardest way to say, I guess, is the perpetrators, the people that have done this. But it's like, at what point do you know somebody's going to be a perpetrator to engage them in this kind of conversation to not do it? So I was really helpful that you brought up, Luanda, like, maybe we need to start at the beginning. It starts with all the small things and then it snowballs into all the big things. And I think maybe that's when people are children, the conversations have to start coming up about consent and being appropriate and the value of people's bodies and things like that. Because I think, like, in school, they obviously give you sex education and tell you kind of, how it works. And then at home, depending on your parent, they'll talk to you about responsibility and how that works. But the conversation about consent and protecting yourself and no means no and who's appropriate to be with in regards to age and things like that, that's a wider conversation that needs to happen. And I can't speak for parents all over the world, but I can just say that, pretty much for me, that conversation was never had. But I don't know for other people's parents, is that being had? Is that conversation being told? And I think with kids, it's just, you have to tell them to be vigilant. But as I said, people are going to pose threats if they want to or not. When I was thinking, like, proactively, what could have been done differently, you always think, okay, well, we could have people patrolling, but then we've got to also think about, well, who are these people patrolling? And I hate to be like that paranoid, but it's like, you can't just show up with a vest and say to me, yeah, I'm patrolling, save the kids, but I don't know you if you're another threat and you're just posing to be somebody who's going to protect me. Like, do you know what I mean? So that's why I feel like, okay, you've got the school governing bodies, you've got all the PTAs, community support officers, people with a bit more authority, maybe they should be the ones patrolling, not to stop the community, though, from doing what they're doing. But I think right now it's about having the right people and also having the right conversations at the right time, because I guess intervention's better than prevention or whatever they call it. So maybe these conversations need to start happening when they're younger. But I'm also horrified at the thought of, if I had one, like a 10-year-old little brother or 10-year-old little sister, this and that, like, I'm horrified to have that kind of conversation with them, because personally for me, this kind of stuff shouldn't be introduced to them this young, but they have to also be made aware to protect themselves. So it's kind of like, where do you start and where do you stop?
I think for me, you have to start really early when it comes to children. And I think you're right, Anissa, it's not fair. Unfortunately, we live in a world that is just unjust and very unfair, because I agree with Lawanda in the sense that a lot of education needs to be had, and a lot of it needs to be had by men. to understand what consent is, what sexual assault is, what adulthood is. Just because a girl has a developed body at the age of 13 does not mean that she is grown enough to be entering something with you by whether she thinks she's consenting or not. Let me just make that clear, because some young girls, and I've been a young girl whose body developed very early and had grown men approaching me, and you feel like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm attractive to people who are older. That's cool. It's not. And I'm very fortunate that something like that didn't happen, because men are told that if she looks like a woman and has the body of a woman, then it's fair game. I think in terms of children, my mum had the conversation with me when I was young, because she knew, and there were people in our family who had been sexually assaulted. So she was very much on, if someone has done something, feel free to come and talk to mummy. Because when we're saying, oh, your 10-year-old brother, like you said, Anissa, sometimes at that point, something has already happened to a lot of people. And sometimes because it's uncomfortable for us, we don't want to broach it, but this child could be suffering in silence. And as Luanda said again, patrolling is all great, but the majority of people, children, are assaulted by people that they know. So it's not usually going to be someone on the street who's going to try and kidnap you, although we see it happens and it's disgusting. A lot of people are assaulted by friends of family, and other children. And that's why there's a need to talk to children and maybe share your own story. They said, use the media and say, oh, you see that happening there when he kisses her? She said she was okay with it. And it's okay if someone says that. And or talking about, body parts, and not being ashamed to call your child's body parts their vagina or their penis, or to have those conversations so that you can say, if someone touches your penis, then say, and it's not mummy or daddy or the doctor and one of us is there, then it's not okay. And you can tell me that, because if we don't start to train it into children to talk about these things, then how are we ever going to be comfortable to talk about it in society? And in terms of paedophiles, I don't even know if paedophiles can be, and I have no basis for saying this, but I don't know if they can be educated out of it, because I think that there is something very wrong there that is going on. I think that there is something going on that is wrong for you to be attracted to a child as an adult. And I'm talking about prepubescent children. Again, if the body's developed, you can be fooled into thinking that someone's older than they are. But for a child, I don't think that's normal. As I've gotten older, I like guys that are my age. Do you know what I mean? So
yes, I do.
I don't even know if education would help them. Not that I'm saying that we shouldn't, but I think that there's other things going on there that have just gone completely wrong.
Yeah, I think there's so many things to factor in when we're looking at someone who's all the way there. Like I after watching that video, I was thinking about that man, and I was thinking, you make all these presumptions about them. I'm thinking probably you're having a rough time at home. You probably aren't, I'm just making all these things in my head to why someone would do that. But it's interesting that you say that, because this is exactly why I kind of go to the beginning instead of thinking like, oh, how do we fix you? I'm thinking, how do we not make any more of you? Because we are a society that has allowed you to exist. So we all need to look at ourselves as a collective to stop this from happening again. And that's why
can you break down what you mean by allowing them to exist? Because I guess for me, I have a trouble with paedophiles in terms of nature and nurture, as in, were they born that way, or did society allow an environment for them? So just because I don't understand what you mean, because that's where I struggle, not by saying, oh, it's too late for them, but I'm like, were they born that way, or was it society
or were they made that way?
Led them down that path. So what did you mean by that specifically, Luanda?
Okay, so in terms of paedophiles and nature and nurture, I can't say I know enough to comment on that. But when I see a man like that, I don't just see it as paedophilia. Like, I see that as misogyny. I see that as toxic masculinity. I don't think that he is solely abusive to just younger women. I'm sure if we found women that were his age in his life, how is he treating them as well? Do you see what I mean? So I think they all fall into different issues that we should all bear the responsibility of cutting out from day dot. Like, as an example, I had a friend who, we went to a house party and I didn't stay over. And then, you know, when you message your friend, like, oh, what happened the next day and stuff, just because I'm wondering, you know, if I missed anything. And she said that she was standing in the kitchen and then someone walked up to her and then just like smacked her ass, like really hard, really loudly. And she was really uncomfortable with it, which is why she messaged me, because she knew that I would agree that she had every right to be. And, you know, my first question was, what did everyone else do? Like, we were there with friends. What did your friends do? And she said they laughed, like everyone just found it funny. And this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that we need to cut it out from day dot, because that, even though someone's going to see that as so small, and if I was in that scenario, I would have said something and then I would have been the person killing the mood, and I would have been, you know, the politically correct one and blah, blah, blah. And it's just banter. I'll be that person all day, every day. I don't care, first of all. But that's just my point exactly, because we're downplaying people's right to their own body. Like, if you've just touched someone and you did it harm, and you did it on like her ass, it's like she's uncomfortable with that, and you're telling her that she's not allowed to be because you want to laugh at it. That's day zero. So then that kind of mindset, when we're allowing this to be acceptable, that develops into something else. That develops to, like, you know, kissing a girl when she's too drunk, and then maybe sleeping with her and she can't remember the next day. And it just goes into all of these things to the point where, like I said in my first statement, we are teaching men that they are entitled to sex. We are teaching men that they are entitled to women's body. And when someone denies you a thing that you feel you're entitled to, you will just take it. And that's why we need to start from birth and sort it out from fresh out the womb.
I hear what you're saying. Luanda, but I almost like hearing what you're saying. Almost, to me, also feels like two different causes, and I don't know how to make that make sense to you. Like, I'm trying to make it sense in my mind, because when I'm thinking of like those kinds of things, like the smacking of the ass and the kissing drunk girls and sex and things, like, for me, that's all like sexually deviant behavior. And not that paedophilia isn't sexually deviant behavior, but I feel like you're almost shot with two different arrows on that one. Like, the children bit, that's where it like throws me, because it's one thing to be sexually deviant to an adult, but it's a whole other level to bring it to children. And so that's why I'm kind of like, I once again don't know enough to say if it's you're born with it or if you're introduced to it or kind of socialized into it. I just think that wherever we can stop it, we should stop it. But I almost feel like they're two different bags. Does that make sense?
I think it's really interesting what you say there, Anissa. And to be honest, us separating it into two categories is what really allows it to continue, because we look at some forms of sexual assault as worse than others. So for me, I've been slapped on the ass by guys before in the past or whatever. Sometimes I made a big deal about it. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, whatever. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm growing up in a time now when I'm starting to realize actually it's all sexual assault. And if I don't call out this type of sexual assault, then when I talk about this, you're not going to understand what the problem is. Not everybody who's going to slap somebody on the backside is going to rape someone. Not saying that whatsoever. But the same way that I've seen it in TV and media since I was a child, like, you know, she said no, but she really wanted it, blah, blah, blah. And by the end, she's very happy and she had an orgasm and, you know, it was a great time for everybody. It sends mixed messages about consent. And consent is always two ways. And when it's not two ways, it's assault. And we have a problem with calling things that are smaller, which we deem smaller. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about me. Yeah. If a guy, like you said, accidentally touched my breast, happened before, would I see that sexual assault and report it to the police? No, I wouldn't. But then if I'm not saying this is sexual assault, I didn't want it, you did it on purpose, it's assault. It allows the environment for it to happen. So we have to call out all of it. We have to put it all in one big bubble so that, I don't know if people are afraid, because again, like we said, it's going to happen, but people are more aware of when they're feeling violated and can say, I don't want it. And that's why I was so big at the beginning about saying no, because like your friend Luanda, when these things happen, I've been there. We've laughed, it's funny. No, she felt bad. She felt like she couldn't say no. And there's a problem there. People need to know that my body is my own, my space is my own, and it has to start from children. We have to tell children to speak up and feel confident in your voice, because that's the way people get older, and sometimes they're in a situation where maybe they felt in their gut that something wasn't right and they could have left with their friend, but they were like, let me not make a big deal about it. No, make a big deal about it. Make a big deal about it. Your voice is valid. Yeah, so...
And you have to do it with your friends as well. Sorry, not to just jump in, but like, and this is probably not only just my issue, but like, I went to an all-girls school, so people just thought because we were all girls it was okay for me to run up and squeeze your breast or smack your bum and things like that. So if they see another person that they deem you to be comfortable with, or another friend do it to you, they're not gonna overreact. But I always overreacted every single time, because my body is my body, and I think you have to set those boundaries, no matter if I know you, no matter if you're my friend, no matter if we're in the same place, no matter if we're having a good time, no matter if I'm drinking. If I don't need to touch my body, you shouldn't. Everyone hands to themselves, people. It's literally, I'm sure your parents teach you that like the first day of nursery. Keep your hands to yourself. Don't touch anyone, don't hit anyone, don't bite anyone. This is what they literally tell you. But somewhere in the middle of it, we all get mixed up. And it's the mixed messages, Sophie, to bring it back full circle.
Real talk. Your hands are your own, your body is your own. Keep them to yourself.
Please God, yes. Well, talking about parenting, as I just spoke about, your parents teach you before you go to nursery, I want to talk about a different kind of parenting. I want to talk about platonic co-parenting. Have you guys heard of this?
Yes.
Yes. Well, a little bit. Well, for those who don't know what platonic co-parenting is, it's basically when you choose to have a child with someone who you are not romantically involved with, and in most cases you also choose not to live with them. And platonic co-parenting is basically now on the rise. So my question to you, lovely ladies, is: if you hadn't found your partner yet, but you really wanted a baby, would you consider platonic co-parenting? And do you think it's better to be a single parent co-parenting with someone you know, or co-parenting with a stranger?
So I definitely see myself having a family, and I've always said, like, from a very young age, that I'm gonna have a family when I'm ready. I don't care if I'm in a relationship or not. I'm just gonna start my family. And I remember saying it in front of my baby cousins, and they were like, "But how do you know you'll be with someone at that age?" I said, "I don't know, but I don't care. I'll have my baby when I want to have my baby." Obviously, in an ideal situation, I'd like to start a family with a romantic partner, but you don't always get to have your ideal situation, you know. And sometimes people get divorced. People fall out of love. People separate. All of those things can happen. I would definitely be up for being a co-parent with a friend that I knew and that I have known for a really long time, because I would know that they would want to raise the baby to the same standards that I would. I would be open to that. However, see now.
Okay. Where we going?
This is because it was the shoulder in, which got
I know, right? It was going along real nicely, and then she just like,
it's
bam,
just
mic
that.
drop.
It's just that I don't see myself co-parenting with like a stranger, and I put stranger in quotation marks for anyone listening on the podcast, because I've been reading a lot about websites where you can find partners and start co-parenting with them, and I've seen a lot of success stories, which I'm very happy about, and it's not something that I turn my nose up to or that I think is a bad idea. I just don't see it working for myself, because a baby is for the rest of your life, and you know, I just see it in the same way as like you could meet someone from Tinder and for the first 3 months they seem great, but what about month 5 and 6 and now you're pregnant? For me, I need to know you for a really long time. I need to see the good, the bad, the ugly before I can make such a life-changing decision, because if I get to that age, I know that, you know, it helps to split the cost financially and all of those things, but I plan to be very rich. I've talked about this before. So I see myself when I'm at that age, I would rather, if I don't have a friend who really, really wants to co-parent and I trust them, then I would rather just be a single parent. I don't think there's really that much wrong with it.
I think for me, I'm here for co-parenting. because I feel like there's a lot of children. Well, the thing is, when I first heard about co-parenting, I thought it was about people trying to look for children who are already in the world and don't have anyone who loves them or care for them. Because
why isn't
that is
that a
something.
thing?
That's something that I feel very strongly about, especially in the sense of we're obsessed with the new in society, and that's new for everything. You know, if it's a child, I want them brand new and it has to be mine. And if they're not mine, then I want them from a baby. I don't want a toddler. Toddlers are fine. I don't want anyone who's 7 or 8 or a teenager. Like, we're very obsessed with that, and the rates for adoption for children who aren't babies and out of toddler age, it gets lower and lower
Honestly.
the older they get. But I think in terms of co-parenting, as long as you find someone who shares the values that you do, and you're on the same page about how you want to raise the child, then I'm kind of cool with it. The thing that really threw me was people who want to co-parent. It's not romantic, but they still try to conceive naturally.
Oh, what, have the sex?
Yeah.
Have the sex.
I was trying to understand.
Why
Exactly,
did I just have flashbacks to my first sexual education class in year 7?
Oh my days.
Have
Do you
sex.
know what? The reason why I say it like that is because that's what the websites call it. They talk like the people who I read about who co-parent have said they talked about and then we try to conceive naturally. That's what they say. It said basically they just wanted to have sex instead of like in vitro, IVF or whatever. But for me, I couldn't have sex with someone who I was co-parenting with and had no romantic interest in just to get pregnant. Like, I'm 100% going down the IVF route. 110%.
If you were going to do platonic co-parenting, you'd do the IVF?
Yeah, it's platonic.
That's real long. That's long though, fam.
Why am I getting into bed with you? Like, that for me just really blurs. I understand it's cheaper.
There's so many
I understand
lines.
if you conceive
It's just
naturally, because that's why they say they do it. It's cheaper. It's a lot cheaper to conceive naturally, just to have sex and have a kid, than to do it in vitro and then do the hormones and this and that. But then there was this couple, it was in The Guardian, and they said they conceived naturally, and then the guy got over-attached, and they still ended up in legal court for this platonic co-parenting, and it turned out very ugly, and she said she regretted it. I don't think that there's any guarantees that things are going to work out when you bring a child into the world. And I think people who get into co-parenting because they think it's going to be less messy than from a romantic relationship, I'm sure there's just going to be obstacles, but different ones.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's just going to be different obstacles. I think whether you've married to the man or you met the man 2 months ago or 20 years ago, whatever, I think like it's 2 different people parenting one person or specific children, and there will be a clash at any point. So you have to kind of hedge your bets. Like, do I want to clash with somebody who I've seen what they're like when they don't get their own way, or somebody I don't know? Like that's the kind of bets you have to hedge. Personally, for me, would I? No, I don't think it's for me, and that's only because like the whole motherhood thing is a question mark. So I don't know if I'd ever want a baby so bad that I'd choose platonic co-parenting, because I think it just wouldn't be for me personally.
Can I ask you, when you say motherhood is a question mark, as in you're not sure if you want children?
Like, yes. I'm not sure if I want children, period. So I wouldn't then get into a situation. And some of the reason as to why I'm not to go into it, but some of the reasons why is because I just don't want to have to look after the child. And I know that sounds crazy, but mothers are burdened with looking after children, and I don't want to do that. And so if I was platonically co-parenting, then because we're having to split the child up in time, if, for example, I had the child 2 weeks of a month and you had the child another 2 weeks of the month, those 2 weeks I have to be fully switched on for the child, and I just wouldn't want to do that, basically. So for me, it's like, I'm not sure. Do I think it works? I think it works depending on the people. Like, I've been watching old episodes of Sister because they came back on Netflix. And Lisa and Ray are the perfect example of people who are platonic co-parenting. Okay, they both have their children. Obviously, they're twins. It's a strange way. But they're not romantically involved. They didn't know each other before. They moved into this house and they're raising their children together. And when I watched Sister and I thought, wow, Lisa and Ray are platonically co-parenting. I've been watching this my whole life, and I've only thought it was a new concept, but it really isn't. So I think if you really want a baby and you have a friend that is willing to have a baby with you as well, then by means go go down that route. I always think it's better to go familiar. But if you don't have anyone and you know it has to be a stranger, just make sure you do your research about the person is what I would just say. That's all.
Yeah, I feel like research can't match the experience though, because like I said, like everyone can see, like it's a matchmaking site. So you're going to give me the bullet points of this person, and
That's
the bullet
true.
points might seem like,
But you could go on some coffee
perfect.
dates, Luanda. You could go on some coffee dates.
Coffee
Figure
dates,
out.
Anita. I
No,
cannot
if you want to
figure
get
out,
to
like,
know them.
you just made a valid point, right? Because I don't think, like, first of all, like, it's okay not to want to be a mom because it's a big commitment and you're recognizing the fact that you have to give everything to this child. Like,
Yes.
I can't figure out if I'm going to be able to do that for the next 18 years, 18 plus years, / the rest of their life. Off two Costas. Like, how am I supposed to know? How am I supposed to know?
Okay, I think
it's not enough time.
let's be fair. A lot of people are like, so some of the families that I saw who do co-parenting, they like, one people spent a year trying to get to know each other. They do spend a little time getting to know each other, a few months. And like you said, you can get pregnant from a one night stand and not know that person and decide to keep the baby. Like I don't think there's really ever any guarantees. But in terms of what Anissa said, in terms of sister, I think for me, that's where the rose-tinted glasses kind of comes of co-parenting, because they live together in the house. Yeah. So that's a very different dynamic than to someone who's co-parenting and the parents don't live together. And that's what I would ideally like for my child, is for it to be two parents living within the same household. Because with co-parenting in different households, I don't really see that any different from divorced parents who just get along really well and raise their child together. And I think there is a dynamic that is missed in bringing up children if the parents don't live together. And I say that as a child of divorce. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm talking from first-hand experience and seeing my husband and other people I know who grew up with two parents in their household, and it was a very loving, caring environment. I've seen a difference in myself and in them. And I would want my child to be able to have a two-parent household. So I don't really know how it differs when the parents are going to live separately and how that would be different from divorced parents, because I feel like it's just kind of similar. And I know a Guardian article was talking about there's a sort of intimacy that they'll miss from their parents not being romantically involved with each other. And they said studies are very early. We don't really know what the effect is going to be on children. But like I said, if there's children to be loved, I'm more than happy for children to come into a loving home, however that is.
Yeah, I don't know about the thing about you'll miss something if your parents aren't romantically involved, to be honest, because actually I think that a child coming from like a platonic co-parenting, like two-parent household might have more of a chance of a consistently healthy environment than a child who has to deal with the like before, during and after of a divorce. And so just because like you're romantically involved with someone, it doesn't mean that the relationship's going to be perfect. It doesn't mean that like there's not going to be like animosity and fights and all of those things. So I think like what you said about rose-tinted glasses, like we put that on for romance sometimes. And so much so that sometimes we accept romance that is less than what we deserve just because we want to have it. Like I see this with people all the time who really, really, really just want a romantic partner, so much so that they'll convince themselves that any Tom, Dick or Harry will do. And then they just stay in that relationship because they're comfortable now. Mm-hmm. But you started, you've been in the relationship since you were like 15 because the television and Valentine's Day told you that you're worth less as a singleton. So, you know what I mean? So I don't know. It's interesting. I think what we need to pay attention to is healthy relationships rather than looking at romance or did you meet online or did you meet from a one night stand or were you married? Like just look for healthy. That's it.
I think healthy, definitely. But in terms of the romantic relationships, I really have to come back on that one. And again, this is from personal experience. Like the way that my husband treats me, 100% is linked to the fact of the love that he saw in his parental home and the way that he saw his mum interacting with his dad and the way that he saw two people who were in love caring for each other. So I think definitely it's about healthy relationships. I agree with that 100% because you can have an unhealthy relationship at home and it makes no difference if there's two parents there. But I think that there is an added thing where a child sees how a loving relationship should happen between two adults romantically.
They can still, the point is, Sophie, they will still see that, but it just doesn't mean that it's going to be from the two people that are raising, like, not raising you, but that created you. So you might see your mom, teach you how to love through her boyfriend, and your boyfriend just might not be your dad. It doesn't mean these children are going to be excluded from that. It just means it's definitely not going to be the two people that decided to raise the child together, you know?
I'm not, okay, let me correct. I'll just say it really quickly, Nisa.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it has to be the parents of the child that have to be romantically involved. I'm talking about people who decide to co-parent and don't have anybody else in the home apart from themselves. And then the child will go between the two households and they might not see a romantic love. I'm not saying it's going to be the worst thing in the world, but I think it does help the child if they see it. If their mum or their dad gets with someone and they see it, that's completely fine. It doesn't need to be between those specific parents.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I kind of meet you guys in the middle there in that agreement, because I, like Sophie, have come from divorced parents, but my parents were like the most happily divorced people, like the best of friends. They're still the best of friends now. So I saw that they still had love for each other, but the idea was, I always see, and I don't know if it's just a me thing, always see a difference between me and people who were raised with both of their parents in the household, in a healthy household, not the ones, no offense, not the ones who've had a less so healthy household, but the parents who are still in love. I always see a massive difference. And when I go to the house, I'm thinking, rah, families love each other. They all sit in one room. Like, it blows my mind, because I'm just like, this is crazy to me. Like, I didn't even think that this was real concept, that two people can sit with the children that they made together and all of them can be in one room, have healthy dialogue, have healthy conversation, love each other, have healthy natural relationships, and want to be in each other's company and are intentional about having each other in their lives. It's like, to me, whenever I see that, it's like the most mind-blowing thing I've ever seen in my life, ever. It's shocking.
So crazy.
So if I was gonna have children, I want the absolute opposite.
True, yeah.
I want the absolute opposite of my upbringing if I had children, because I've seen how it's worked for me. The jury's still out on it, so I want to see it in a different way.
The jury's still out. But you know what? Now that you said that, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
So now that you've said that, I feel like maybe I've even been probably coming from this whole conversation from a different place than everyone else, because like the reason why I was laughing, maybe it wasn't rude thing to do to laugh, but like that has literally just been my whole life, and I always
and that's a privilege, Luanda.
It is a privilege.
It's so privileged.
I have to say this, Luanda, because my husband, when we got together, could not understand the difficult dynamics between family who don't get along and can't really be around each other. Because I've been around that with uncles or aunts or whatever, I'm like, people cannot get along and the family continues, it's fine. But for him, he literally, his mind could not get it, because he was like, my parents have loved each other and have always, and I'm like, babe, it's not like that for everyone. And if you've had it, it's a privilege.
It's an absolute privilege.
If you get into a romantic relationship long time with somebody and you want to settle down with them and they haven't had it, Luanda, you will see differences. Like,
you will see it.
And it's not something that you want. What you have is the ideal, and I think it really allows children to have this soft cushion to go out into the world and be their best selves in a way that children from broken homes don't really have.
Yeah, I remember being at school and like my family and I would always get together for anyone's birthday or just some event or whatever. So like all the cousins, all the uncles and aunties, like we'd all be together. I remember talking to my best friend at the time, who's from like a single parent household and didn't have that much of a wide extended family. And I remember just saying just casually I love our family get-togethers. And then she started laughing at me. And I was like, what did I say? And she's like, I was like, no, but what's funny? And she just laughed because she thought it was ridiculous because it wasn't familiar. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's not to say that just because I was raised in a 2-parent household with siblings that there hasn't been issues or there hasn't been family issues or times that people haven't gotten along and we need to sort things out. But I think I definitely recognised that growing up, I always had in my mind that I intended to replicate the family that I came from. Like, I always just said I want to have 4 children because I have 3 siblings and we work out good. It just works, you know what I mean? So I was like, yeah, no, this makes sense. I want that. I'm going to make that for myself. But I guess the point is, like, if I get to that age and I can't have it in the ideal way, I will do it by any means necessary because I want a family, so I will be having one.
Fair enough.
Birth, adoption, romantic.
Adoption would be beautiful.
Yeah, I'm here for adoption.
I think adoption's so beautiful, honestly.
Are you going to adopt, Sophie?
Do you know what? I think that's probably a question for another time.
We'll save that for next week.
We'll save
the next week. So make sure you watch next week so you can see Sophie answer that question.
And on that note, thank you for watching and listening to another episode of Ethnically Speaking. We hope you have enjoyed it as much as we have enjoyed talking. And let's keep the conversation going. Would you co-parent with someone that you don't really know? Drop us your answer in the comments below. And if you want to see more from us, make sure you subscribe to our mailing list to have access to our new segment, Extra Ethnic, which is exclusive to our emails only. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a thing. For a summary of everything that we've spoken about today, head on over to unitedmelaningroup.com/ES02022. We will see you same time, same place next week. Until then, wash your hands, wear your mask, keep your distance, and stay safe.